We'll see. All right. So we are going to learn about rebellion to revolution. Anybody know what the dates would be? Come on, Braylon.
1800?
No. No, not the 1800s.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. How do I hit?
The early 18s.
Is it the arrow? Where's the arrow at?
Arrow.
Guys? Oh, y'all.
Take them
No, that's not it either.
The mid 1700s.
Oh, here it is. Oh, because it was, yeah, okay. All right, so our learning target for today, we're going to get through as much as we can get through, but it says construct timelines of historical events. So what do we mean when we say construct timelines? Like you make a timeline, so it's like if we were making our own, it would be a line,
And then like lines and then history.
and then it would be a line, and then you would put like a dot or like a little tick mark, and you put 1776. And then what happened, right? And then you can draw conclusions about the relationship of significant events in the history of the United States to the expansion of democracy in the United States. And explain the significance of key ideas contained in the Declaration of I didn't say that correctly, hold on. The Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. I didn't say Bill Wright either. I think I'm getting a cold, guys. Oh no. All right. All right, so unit claim. What did we talk about? We talked about this in English, right? How can conflict and compromise change a nation? So again, when I give you a question in English, you turn that into a statement. So how can we turn this into a statement? So we're going to learn how conflict and compromise change a nation. All right, so key questions we want to think about. What were the main colonial grievances that led to rebellion? What is rebellion? Anybody know what a rebellion like? Jace, what we got?
Kind of like a fight.
A fight, okay.
Or
Is
an
there
argument.
argument? What do we got, Dylan?
An argument between a colony.
Okay. So what do we got? They don't want to have something. So like, okay, so fighting with something that doesn't want to happen. Natalie.
Like an argument for rights.
Okay, argument for rights. What do we got?
Protest.
A protest, kind of. So that's kind of like what we would probably in our day. Rebellion would be like a protest. How does the Declaration of Independence? I'm going to restate this. How is the Declaration of Independence significant in United States history? Y'all.
Clear the law.
I mean, come on. What tactics did the colonists use leading up to the revolution? Tactics. Anybody know what tactics might be? Someone? Braylon.
Tactics are kind of like, I can't think of the word. It's like ways to do something.
Ways to do something? Okay. That's a good roundabout definition for tactics. Dylan, what we got?
It's like something you do to win or find a way to
Okay.
strategize.
Strategize. Okay. What were the effects of the American Revolution? That would be another question we want to answer. All right, so focus words. We got grievance. Anybody know before we lost it? Anybody know what a grievance might be? Uh-oh.
Like an official
A
statement.
complaint.
Hey, no, okay, a
Like a
complaint.
complaint.
Okay.
Like
Jace.
an official statement.
No, okay, so y'all, okay, so,
Sneaky,
right.
sneaky.
So, sneaky. An official statement of a complaint over something believed to be wrong or unfair. Boycott. Kind of like, did we say that? No, we said strike, but boycott.
Yeah,
kind
kinda
of like,
How
So-
do you refuse to do
so,
It's like a punishment.
boycott is when you refuse to buy or handle goods as a punishment or protest. Revolution, a forcible overthrow of government in favor of a new system. Independent. Y'all all think you're independent, but sometimes you're not.
free to do whatever we want.
Free to do whatever you want. No. We know that doesn't happen in Miss Bitter's class, right?
Yes.
Okay. Declaration. Anybody know? So Declaration of the Declaration of Independence. What is the Declaration
Like
of
a
Independence?
deal.
What do we got?
Like
Okay. So
a good deal.
Statement.
a formal or official statement. Preamble. Anybody know?
Introduction that does the purpose.
Right, so in English, when we talk about an introduction slide, so you're doing the slides for Hatchet, I want an introduction to tell me what I'm about to be looking at, or I'm going to be reading, things like that. That's why we do an introductory paragraph. So a preamble, so there's a preamble to our Constitution. It's an introduction that tells the purpose of a formal document. All right, loyalists.
Look at this one.
People who belong to the
People that are loyal to Britain King.
All right, so people who were loyal to the British, they wanted to remain part of Britain, and so they wanted to remain British citizens. And then patriots were
American colonists.
People
People
wanted their
wanted
free
to
rights
break
of Britain.
France and go to America.
all right. So they wanted it. They wanted to say bye to the British colonies, bye as the British people.
And go to America.
Right. All right.
We had to write a whole essay about patriots and
Then we had an argument.
All right. Trouble in the New World. In the last unit, so we learned, that the earliest colonists settled in the Americas long before the United States of America even existed. So we talked about, you said 1800? No. But from 1607 until 1776,
Close.
you were a little close, yes. The colonies were under British rule and existed to benefit the British king. So, under British rule, and what is benefit? What would be a word? What would be a good definition for benefit?
Benefit
Jason.
would be something that like comforts it, kind of.
Okay, so
Kind of like a trade.
okay,
Like
right.
I'll give you this for that, but the benefit is
Lydia, what we got?
The reward of like something you do.
I can't hear you. What?
Like a reward of something you do.
Okay, so I give y'all. See, I'm not your social studies teacher, but I'm your ELA teacher. I give you, even though you don't think so, I give you your cold reads and take them for a grade to benefit you, because I want y'all to get better at reading and understanding what you're reading, because I think that's going to benefit you on the end of the year tests and in your classes next year and other classes.
Isn't benefit also like give you a chance?
Giving you a chance. Yes, like benefit of the doubt. That's what you're thinking. I think that's what you're thinking, Mama. Alright. So we also learned, because the colonies weren't granted the full rights and representation that they wanted, they decided to separate from Britain and form an independent country. So we have not seen that years, right? Years and years and years and years. So, they were like, I'm tired of this. I don't want to be under your rule. I don't like your rules.
they're stupid.
They're stupid. Some of them may have said that. I'm not really sure if they did. But I want to break free, is what happened. So, we've got a timeline. So 1607.
They wanted to become independent.
Right. So we've got dates, but we're going to add them as we move on. So 1607, you should have this on. Jamestown colony established. 1620, Plymouth colony established. And 1776, Declaration of Independence. All right. So, for the colonists, the revolution was not only led to a new system, but an entirely new independent country called the United States. That's where we came in. What?
We read this in 4th grade.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, we did.
Good job. All right, next, we will analyze the cover of If You Lived at the Time of the American Revolution in the parts. So, we're going to be investigating these. All right. All right, so rebellion begins. So here's our map. French lands is that green? That's a green, right? So British is red. Spanish is yellow, mustard yellow. Okay, and then disputed or unclaimed by Europeans is the off-white colors. Okay, so France did not like that so many British colonies were moving into the Ohio territory. So the French believed that they had the right to the land since they had explored the area first. France tried to force the colonists out, and after a while, Britain's king gave the colonists permission to form an army to fight back. So this led to the French and Indian War. So we've got Louisiana, which is where we are, right? All right, New Spain. Florida's all the way down there. So we've got the Ohio, Mississippi River, Ohio River. So New Spain, population was 5 to 7 million in this New Spain area. But just in Louisiana, it just says what?
15,000.
Okay, so that's a big discrepancy. Oh, okay. Your mama needs that. All right. I didn't mean to do that. All right, Leo, I need you to do me a favor.
Press allow.
Press allow. Press allow. But I gotta get it out of this first. Okay. Now. There we go. Alright, so there's like a huge discrepancy. And then where, okay, do you see, so Alyssa, do you see the red? Right here. Can you see that? It says, what is this? And then they're all separated.
13 colonies.
The 13 colonies. So we have all, and they're separated in gray. The population for that is what? 250,000, yes. All right. So France versus Britain. Many Native Americans sided with France. The French traded with them but did not settle on the land like the British did. Even with help from the Native Americans, France lost their war. So even with help from the Native Americans, France lost the war. As a result, Britain gained all land except New Orleans, because we're the best. West of the Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi River. So it says, who led the colonist army?
George Washington.
George Washington. Who is George Washington?
Our
first president.
All right, I'm just making sure we got that. Good job. All right, so I'm going to read this to you, French and Indian War. So, as the colonies grew, settlers began to dream of moving across the Appalachian Mountains and into the Ohio Valley, the region between the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. The French had also dreamed of moving past the Mississippi River in these lands. British settlers wanted to farm the rich soil there, and the French wanted to trap beavers and trade the furs. Great Britain and France could not agree about which country should control these lands. Both Britain and France claimed this area. In 1754, the French made good on their claim by building a fort where the city of Pittsburgh stands today. They called it Fort... No.
Fort Leonard.
No.
Alarm.
They called it Fort
Quincy.
Oh.
I'm going to go with that. I'm not good at that pronunciation of that. News of the fort alarmed the governors of Virginia. He ordered a small force of Virginia militia to drive the French out of the Ohio Valley. Militias are small armies of citizens who are trained to fight in an emergency. All right. So, what did we talk about? We talked about this Friday in our National Guard cold read about militias. It's not like so. We've had those around, didn't it? So even in the National Guard cold read, we talked about how militias had been around for this long. So proof is right here. I've already lost where I'm at. Hold on, guys. All right, militias are small armies of citizens who are trained to fight in an emergency. To head the militia, the governor chose a 22-year-old volunteer named George Washington. So he was only 22. Washington's whistling bullets were the first shots in a conflict known as the French and Indian War. The war was part of a long struggle between France and Britain for territory and power. The Native Americans of the region sided with the French. The French and Native Americans had traded furs for years, and the Native Americans disliked the British because of how they treated the Native Americans. We've talked about that, or y'all have talked about that, and know in other social studies classes about how, can you scoot up, how horribly the Native Americans were treated. The Native Americans also wanted to protect their land so they could grow their crops and hunt in the woods for both meat and furs. The British armies marched into the Ohio Valley was a disaster. The troops' bright red uniforms made them perfect targets for French sharpshooters and their Indian allies. 2/3 of the soldiers were killed. So we've got, that's a lot, yes. And they had red uniforms. When you are in battle, what should you try to do? Just like if you're deer hunting, for most of my students in here, deer, duck, squirrel, you gotta blend in, because what's gonna happen if a deer sees a big old giant red thing? It's gonna run away. Same thing, you're an easy target if you're at war and you've got red on, or orange.
Really into
Or like when we had homecoming week, we all had the neon colors. We would stand out. You could see us probably from a mile away if it was a clear day. Natalie.
Deer can only see blue. No, they can't.
Oh, that's not what we were talking about though. We're talking about this. All right. So Washington himself narrowly escaped death. I had 4 bullets through my coat and 2 horses shot under me, he wrote in his journal. Showing great courage, Washington led the survivors back to Virginia. There, he was greeted as a hero. The French and Indian War raged for 7 long years. The turning point came in 1759 when British troops captured Canada. In 1763, Britain and France signed a peace treaty ending the war. In this treaty, France ceded or gave Canada to Great Britain. So, anybody know what ceded means? Surrender. Good job, Braylon. Surrender possession or control over something. So I succeeded, I don't know what.
In baseball.
I'm not good at that, so yeah, probably. I would give up. All right, so we've got pre-war boundaries. So what do we have right here? We have Canada, Quebec. Anybody know what's important about Quebec? Good. Okay, all right. So we've got Louisiana Territory with Mississippi and Ohio River. We've got Texas, Florida, and that is Spanish territory. French territory, which
Texas was its own country back then.
well, yeah, okay. And then we've got right in between the British America, or British colonies, and Louisiana, we have the disputed between, so this is the land that was disputed between Great Britain and France. So, do you understand what we've got here, right?
Yes.
So, French territory other than New Orleans, we were given, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we now have the Spanish territory territory. We are now grouped with Texas. And then we've got now British territory. Instead of Florida being Spanish, we've got Florida being British territory. All right, now we've got a tangent. Louisiana, we are a French territory. We were founded by French, right? That is why, give me a reason why Louisiana still has what instead of what?
Free ride.
No.
That's French.
What do we got that no other state has?
Seafood.
We, no, there's
Parishes.
parishes instead of,
Cities.
y'all are
Counties.
so funny. Y'all have not been.
Counties.
Counties, yes, Leo. Yeah, no, that's what I said.
Good job,
Some of
Leo.
y'all have never been out of
I
Louisiana,
lived in
so they
Texas
probably
County,
don't.
and then when I heard parish, I'm like, what is parish?
Right, because that is still from
Oh, like Vernon
our
Parish.
French settlers. We are in parishes. I get confused going other places. So I'm like, what's a county? And I'm like, oh wait. All right, so Proclamation of 1763. This would be something that we put on our timeline, guys. After the French and Indian War, many colonists were excited to settle on the new land just won from France. Many American Indians in the Ohio Territory did not want the settlers on the land, so they continued to fight back. King George, we got a king, because what?
King George III.
Did not want to deal with more fighting between the colonists and Native Americans, so he passed a law called the Proclamation of 1763. So the law said that all land west of the Appalachian Mountains was reserved for Native Americans and off limits for the colonists. There you go.
He's
So-
the king.
British territory, and then all this we've got all still of those colonies, right? So on your timeline, right?
We read a book today. No, not yesterday. We read a book in fourth grade and it was called George versus George. Yeah.
All right, just give you a few seconds to write that down, please, and thank you. So, how, so far, so what was our question at the beginning? How can, anybody remember? How can conflict and compromise change a nation? So right now, we've got some conflict, right?
Yes.
So what's going on? We've got moving around the territories, right?
Wars.
We've got wars. We've got lives being lost because of these wars. So conflict, not compromise, conflict can change a nation in negative
Chaos.
ways.
Chaos.
It is chaos. Yeah, you are completely and utterly right. All right.
King George III.
All right. Trouble with the king. So Leo, you said it. They didn't even say it. So good job. It's fine. All right. So we said King George. He said King George III. So Leo was right. The French and Indian War was very expensive for Great Britain. To help cover the cost of the war, British King George III issued several acts. Acts are
Something
laws. Acts are something that you have to do. So yes, a law. To gain more control over the colonies and make a profit. Profit is when, let's say, we got Braylon wanting to sell 50-cent candy bars for $1.20. Or Miss Spooner, because y'all never ever bring your water. If I were to come in here, although I won't do that because that's not what I'm supposed to do. But if I were to bring a 40 or a 4-pack of water that I got for what?
$2.
$4, $3, I don't know. Target the other day, 24-pack of Dasani was like $5. But anyways, if I were to bring that in here and said, okay, how many of y'all that don't have water today, I'll give you one for $1. That is me making a profit.
That's $24.
Right. All right, so he is wanting to catch up what he lost for that French and Indian War and make a profit. Parliament also ruled that the colonists were only allowed to buy goods from Great Britain, even if they could buy it for a lower price from another country. All right, so think about it. Right now, we live in a military town, right?
Yes.
We've got a lot of government workers that are not military but work on the military base. I know several of y'all have family that do that,
My
right?
mama,
Yes?
My mama, my cousin
Right.
Wesley, my
So,
dad.
all right.
Dad.
So, what would happen if our president came in and said, "Hey, we don't need some of these government workers," and they get laid off? And you,
That
hold
sounds
on,
like our president right now.
calm. No. Let's, Leo. I need you to stop. I need you to rein it in. All right. So, and you're short on money. Your parents are short on money.
Okay.
But you have somebody that says you can only shop at. All right, let's go. Who says Market Basket is more expensive than Walmart? Like everybody. Everybody.
haven't been there.
You okay? Well, it's more expensive. So what if we had, like, say our mayor, which he can't do this, but I'm just giving you an example. What if our mayor said, everybody, we're trying to put Walmart out of business because it's a national corporation. Everyone in Vernon Parish has to shop at Market Basket. We're gonna have problems, right? It's gonna have problems.
I would leave.
So you've got a king that's saying you can only buy from Great Britain, even if you can find a good deal somewhere else. It's Christmas time. I want to find good deals for my kids, right?
Sam's.
Right. I love things. All right. So let's get back on track. Colonists were also forced to only sell goods they produced to Britain, even if another country would pay them more money. Wouldn't you be mad?
Yes.
Right.
I won.
Raylan?
How would they know if they sold it to another?
Look, there's records. Taxes were still happening back then. We get your money is tracked. How you spend your money is tracked. How you like your job, you get it's all of it's tracked. Even back then, you had lines of credit. It wasn't like you swiped a card, but everything was tracked. All right. So again, what did we say? It would make you angry, right?
Yes.
Super, super angry. So, when the colonists heard of the proclamation of 1763, they were furious, right?
Yes.
All right. They did not like being told where they could and could not settle. The colonists who had already settled west of the Appalachian Mountains were not happy at being told to return east, and many refused. It didn't stop there. So, we've got that. So, we've got, we're skipping that today.
That's a primary source.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Conflicts in the colonies. Let me see if this will work. I'm going to go to my computer to see if it works, but let me go.
So I've got my essay written, and I've been working on it for about a week. So now I'm going to show you how I use Grammarly to edit. Okay, so here's my essay, and I'm going to click through Grammarly suggestions in the right hand.
Although the colonies in Great Britain were united in the French-Indian War, after the war ended, tension immediately arose between them. The colonists resented the control Great Britain began to exert. Taxes in the colonies were raised quickly. The war was expensive, and since it had been fought to protect the colonies, Great Britain wanted the colonists to pay for it. Meanwhile, tension between the colonists and the American Indians was also high. More and more settlers were moving across the Appalachians, taking the land and hunting the animals. American Indians attacked many forts and homes in an effort to drive settlers back. In order to protect the colonists, the Crown issued the Proclamation of 1763, which gave American Indians all the land west of the Appalachians and forbade further settlement there. The colonists were furious. Many settlers ignored the law and moved west anyway. Complaints about the controlling British rose. These conflicts eventually led to the Revolutionary War.
had the French and Indian War. That caused debt. That caused turmoil, right? That caused proclamations and acts to go into effect. That caused people to be mad. And that, so we now, because of one conflict, it has turned into two different what? Wars. All right. So Sugar and Stamp Act. All right. The first tax came in the form of the Sugar Act of 1764. Where should this go, guys? On your timeline. Colonists were forced to pay a tax. So a tax is what? Money collected from citizens to pay for government services. And so this was on sugar, molasses, and several other goods. So that was the first one. So the second one, the Stamp Act of 1765, forced colonists to pay an extra tax on all printed goods, like newspapers, magazines, and even playing cards. All right, why is this would be, okay, so today would that be a big deal?
No.
No. Okay, so all these materials were required to have a stamp placed on them in order to show that the tax had been paid. So why, so today that's not a big deal, right? Because we've got Netflix, we got Hulu, we got Disney Plus,
Funimation.
we got Xboxes, and
Funimation.
and what?
Funimation.
I don't even have a clue what that is.
It's an anime.
Oh, well, I don't know. All right, Miss Spinner's old. Okay, so this is a big deal because why? Braylon, get your head up. Why would this be a big deal to be tax on things like newspapers, magazines, and all this other stuff? Lydia,
Because they didn't have like TV and
they didn't have TV.
they would, to get their like news and stuff, they would
All right, so
look at the newspaper.
all right,
I
so
know.
that was their only form of real entertainment.
And it was like use of like everything.
Right, that's how you learned about things. There is no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no Snapchat, there was no nothing. To learn about things, you went first thing in the morning and got a newspaper. And so now that is being taxed.
Oh yeah, I would get mad.
Yeah, everybody was mad. So, the effects of the Sugar Act. In order to enforce the collection of taxes, violators were tried in British courts where a judge decided the outcome rather than a jury. Judges were awarded 5% of the confiscated cargo as compensation, which gave them the financial incentive. Anybody know what an incentive would be? What do we got, Jace?
Something you need.
No, not something incentive. Well, it would be kind of like a reward. So, to find the violator guilty and thus enforcing the law vigorously. This new system removed the traditional British protection to a fair trial. With taxes now being enforced, goods such as lumber, iron, and coffee had to pass through Britain. These vessels had to be unloaded and reloaded while paying duties on their goods before reaching the colonies. This made price of goods rise. The actual cost of the Stamp Act was small, so bigger effect on sugar than the stamp. What made the law so offensive to the colonists was not so much its immediate cost, but the standard it seemed to set. In the past, taxes and duties on colonial trade had always been viewed as a measure to regulate commerce, not to raise money. The Stamp Act, however, was viewed as a direct attempt by England to raise money in the colonies without the approval of the colonial governments. If this new tax was allowed to pass without resistance, the colonists reasoned the door would be open for far more troublesome taxation in the future. So pretty much it's saying, like, if you let this happen, it's going to keep happening. And and it'll go too far. All right. So one more before we finish. The Quartering Act of 1765. King George decided to keep his army in America. 10,000 soldiers called redcoats because of their red jackets to keep an eye on the colonies. In 1765, Parliament passed the Quartering Act, which said that the colonists had to provide quarters, so places to live, not like money, quarters, to all the redcoats. The colonists were also ordered to provide them candles, food, and bedding. So not only am I taking your stuff, I'm taxing you, but you've got to put up my soldiers. Wouldn't you be upset?
Yes.
Wouldn't you be mad?
Yes.
Nowadays they have houses.
Right, but back then they didn't, and they wanted you to hold up with them.
So they just stop by a house anywhere they want and be like, you have to feed me.
Pretty much. So, the colonists were thought that these taxes were unfair. They had no representative. So representative, what is the representative? Someone that
Represents your
so takes the place for probably a bunch of people. Like our state representative, he listens to what the people have and he goes for us to try to help make sure taxes that need to get passed, or laws that need to get passed, and what doesn't. So they had no say in the laws being made for them. The colonists reacted in protest. They boycotted British products and merchants. They even burned stamp paper in the streets. A secret organization formed called the Sons of Liberty. This group led many of the protests in the colonies.
So
So,
they had like many rebellions.
right. All right, so think about it for a few minutes. I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about it. Give me a claim for that question. Right now, all we've talked about is really conflict. How has conflict affected this nation? Think about it. Braylon, get up. Give me a few minutes. How does conflict affect the nation or a nation? Dylan, what do we got?
conflict affects the nation by causing the citizens to start riots for their rights.
Okay, so you could say conflict affects nations in a negative way.
Yes, that's I'd say conflict. Conflict affects the country by leading to chaos and revolutions.
Uh-huh.
Conflict for laws.
All right, good job, Leo. Natalie,
It brings down territory of a nation.
right? It moves territories, it moves borders, it moves people. It's unrest. You can't settle.